Are you fascinated by the strange and mysterious in our world? Do you find yourself drawn to odd and unusual events or peculiar historical moments that aren't talked about in the history books?
Do you feel as though you have a connection to forces or specters unseen, or that you're not entirely alone in the woods when you go for a hike? Do you think there could be something more out there?
Well, strangers, do we have the podcast for you? I'm Christiana.
And I'm Bree.
Welcome to Something Strange, a podcast covering strange stories ranging from the supernatural, the paranormal, weird history, folklore, and more.
From cryptids to real-life historical figures, from hauntings to peculiar happenings, there's a story here for you. Tune on in the first and third Fridays of each month for our main episodes. But if you can't get enough, check out our mini episodes on the fourth Fridays of each month.
We're on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Audible, and YouTube. And for even more strange content, check us out on our socials: Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and TikTok.
For now, strangers, it's time for us to part ways.
Remember to tune on in.
We'll be right here with Something Strange.
Canadian Creepies is recorded on the traditional lands of the Haudenosaunee and Anishinaabe peoples, under the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Agreement. These lands and waters have been cared for since long before Canada existed, and they remain deeply important to Indigenous communities today. As we tell stories about darkness, injustice, and memory, I want to acknowledge the very real histories of colonization, violence, and erasure that Indigenous peoples continue to endure. A land acknowledgement can't undo that harm, but it is a reminder to keep listening, learning, and supporting in truth and reconciliation in meaningful ways. We share these stories not to forget, but to shine light, always with respect for peoples and nations whose land we live on. Canadian Creepies covers true crime, dark history, and disturbing events. Some episodes may include graphic descriptions or sensitive subject matter. We do our best to handle every story with care and respect for those affected. That said, we sometimes use humor and sarcasm as a way to process heavy content, never to disrespect victims, survivors, or their families. Listener discretion is advised. Welcome to this episode of Canadian Creepies. So this format, before we get started, just before I even do a content advisory, Amanda and I are recording this episode via Riverside because the weather is poo, just so bad. So
Ontario winters,
they're brutal. So we are here on Riverside on video. I'm having a time. Amanda seems to be good. Okay. She can see Daisy, but not me.
I can see Daisy.
Okay.
Earlier, the way I had my camera set up, you could see my dog wandering in the background, too.
Oh, Potato. Okay.
Greatest dog name ever.
It is a good dog name. Okay. So, I'm going to put on my content advisory voice now. I thought I was going to be golden with this setup, and then that microphone fucking failed me. Okay. Now I don't know, how I want to sit. Okay. Before we begin, a content advisory. This episode discusses colonial violence, abuse, trauma, and systemic harm inflicted on Indigenous children and communities. Listener discretion is advised. How are ya?
Aside from being freezing cold, not so bad. Yourself?
I am good. It's also freezing cold, but I had a bass lesson today.
Oh, yeah, that's right. How did that go?
Oh, it was good. I'm learning Blister in the Sun, so it was good. That's a
nice.
hectic song. If we have any bass player listeners, let me know. Speakpipe.com/Canadian Creepies. I'm still getting set up here. I'm sorry. Okay. I had it all sorted before. Oh, there we go. Okay, great.
She's golden now, folks.
Okay, I think we got it. But I can turn the laptop this way. Well, it's okay. I'm getting tripped out because the camera is separate from the... Can you still hear me if I'm over here?
I can.
That didn't sound very confident. I'm going to move over
It's not
here.
as clear as it was before.
Okay, so this one's the way.
Yeah.
We're almost there. Okay. Oh my God. We're so... Okay. There we go. Okay, we're good. Okay, so my unscripted banter topic was I don't know if I told you this. So I joined this group on Facebook called In My Book Girl Era because I'm in my book girl era.
You are.
Thank you. And there was a post and somebody said, hope this is okay to post in here. Have I told you this?
No.
Okay, so does anybody know where I can get a copy of Mein Kampf for my boyfriend? He's a World War I, World War II history buff. Me reading the comments, expecting people to be like, this is ridiculous. Literally, it's other women being like, yeah, you can get it here. I'll ask my boyfriend where he got his.
Whoa. It is.
I left the group because I'm like, I can't.
Oh my God.
I'm not going to be one of those. Go ahead.
Oh, next to the Bible, it is the most sold book worldwide after the Bible.
That's
right?
stupid. That's stupid.
Yeah.
I hate that. I hate it.
Especially given today's political climate.
Yeah. Listen, you can understand World War I and World War II without reading Mein Kampf. Straight up. You can. You don't need to purchase it.
He wasn't even involved in the wars when he wrote it. He was in prison.
And he was in prison when he wrote it.
He was in prison when he wrote it. So it literally has nothing to do with either of the wars. I mean, it is his viewpoint that kind of, inspired World War II, but he was not in any of the wars when he wrote that book, from my understanding.
No, he wasn't. He was just some butthole man. Just a butthole man.
They usually are.
So I left that group incidentally. I didn't bother saying I'm out of here because I think those people are weird. I just left. I was gonna report the group, then I decided not to. But anyway, so that's inspired another episode, a fun episode we're gonna do that I'll tell you about off mic that is gonna be fun for us. A little satire, it's gonna be a little fun.
A little satire never hurt anybody.
That's right. I'm still watching The Sanctuary, A Witch's Tale. Fully got AMC Plus for it.
We're into True Detective right now.
Oh, that one's good. What season are you on?
We just finished season 1, and John was like, that was fucking brilliant.
Who are they? Who's in season 1 again? Is it
Matthew McConaughey and Woody Harrelson? Right. And I was totally as soon as I saw it, I was like, that's all pagan stuff. That's pagan.
That one's good. The Jodie Foster season's really good. Wait till you get to that.
The fourth one. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, really good. And I'm still reading Witches in New York, the one by Amy McKay, the Canadian author, written in the 70s.
Did finish You Weren't Meant to Be Human. If any listeners who listened to the last episode and heard me mention that book, I will give a trigger warning. There are some heavy subject matter in that book. It deals with trans identity, infant loss, abortions. There's a lot going on in that book. So if you're interested in that, if you're sensitive to that stuff, proceed with caution.
Yeah.
It was very heavy.
That sounds heavy. What's it called?
You Weren't Meant to Be Human.
It's weren't meant to be human.
Yeah, it's this dystopian future. Anything dystopian gets me. And people kind of get involved with these mutated colonies of worms. Mm-hmm. And the colony wanted the women to start getting pregnant so they could infect the babies, almost like body snatchers, so that they could have a version of themselves, because it's a hive mind. They could have a version of themselves that wandered the daylight so they could feel the sun.
Right.
It was really, really weird.
That sounds really weird. But it sounds also really good.
I enjoyed it, but again, I know it's not going to be for anybody because there were some very heavy scenes in that book for sure. That some people I know would be very it would be very emotional for them to read.
Yeah. So if you're going to read that book, guys, proceed with caution. Mm-hmm. Should I get into it?
Absolutely. Let's dive in.
Okay. So when most people hear the words residential school, they have at least a basic understanding of what that system was and the damage it caused. And if you've been listening to us for some time, you should. You should have some knowledge of that by now.
We did an entire summer series on residential schools.
It's right there for you. What far fewer people understand is that residential schools were not the only tools of assimilation operating in Canada. Alongside them existed another system, one that is often minimized, misunderstood, or framed as somehow less harmful. They're called Indian day schools. Because children went home at night, day schools are frequently described as a softer alternative, a lesser harm, and a different category altogether. This episode is going to challenge that narrative. Day schools and residential schools were different in structure, but they were not different in purpose. They were not different in ideology, and for many survivors, they were not different in harm. Both systems were designed to erase Indigenous language, culture, and identity, and both enforced obedience through punishment and humiliation. I fucking hate that. I hate that so much.
Yeah.
Like, to children. I can't even, under the guise of, like, the education system, bleh, it's the worst. I hate it.
And it really, like, I was talking with John, my partner, about this last night. And he was like, what's a day school? He's like, aren't they residential schools? And then he didn't realize that they lasted up until like the 90s.
Yeah.
And I was like, no, I was like, I think 8 or 7 when the last one was destroyed. And he was like, really? And that's just information that the Canadian people aren't given in this construct.
Yeah.
Which is horrible.
It is. It is horrible. Because both residential schools and day schools left lasting trauma that did not end when the school day or the school year was over. Like, even if you think about, like, just like a regular school day, you don't just leave it there. Like, you brought that home with you.
Yeah.
Especially kids. They don't know how to compartmentalize. Today we're going to talk about what Indian day schools really were, how they fit into the same colonial system as residential schools, and why understanding that connection matters, especially when we consider how recent this history truly is.
Mm-hmm. Indian day schools were often discussed as part of the distant colonial past, but many operated well into the mid to late 20th century. Survivors, staff, and administrators from these schools are still within living memory. Robert Carney, yes, that Carney, served.
We're not. Hold on, I'm going to pause you one sec. Because people are loving the Carn Man right now. Everybody's loving PM Carney. We're not going after him. Okay?
No.
But if I wanted to, I fucking would, and none of you would stop me. Okay? Let's make that clear.
She probably thought about it.
I did think about it. However, the reason I chose these, like, the initial episode intent was to be focused around Robert Carney. After doing research and deciding how it should be framed, it's more about the day schools and how Robert Carney fit into that. And really, Mark Carney is just a victim of his circumstance for me right now, because I'm just really trying to illuminate how not far day schools and residential schools are from right now.
Yeah.
Like, this isn't Mark Carney's grandfather, great-grandfather. This was his dad. Now,
Yeah.
I'm not saying Mark Carney has these views. Not saying that. Not saying that at all. We're just trying to illustrate how
The relevance.
the relevance. Thank you. Please continue.
No, I do think that was important, though, because things can get misconstrued, especially when they're not in our own brains and planning how we're planning these episodes and structuring them and what our viewpoint is. And no, I think that was very important to emphasize.
Yes, right. Let's get that out of the way.
Yes. But anyways, he served as a principal at the John Brownie Treatment Center, or JBT Day School in Alberta. The school was a residential day school for Indigenous children, and his role places him within the administrative structure of the Indian day school system, not merely adjacent to it. This underscores that day schools were staffed and overseen by professionals, not informal or benign institutions. The day schools are frequently framed as less harmful, not the same as residential schools, and a softer, more humane alternative. But that framing minimizes the shared federal policy goals or political goals, the shared assimilationist ideology, and the documented abuse and trauma that was experienced by the survivors. This broader tendency in Canada, there is a broader tendency in Canada to place residential and day schools far away in time. Like I just said, my partner didn't realize how recent this was.
So recent.
Mm-hmm. Treating them as belonging to a morally resolved past, and it hasn't been resolved yet. We are still trying to make right what was wrong, although not much has been done in that way. We'll get into that. These systems, the involvement of identifiable figures in recent decades challenges that narrative, though. These systems did not disappear generations ago. They functioned within modern Canada. This episode is not about individual villainy. It is about systems, institutional roles, authority, and responsibility. Principals and administrators enforced policies, maintained discipline, and represented state and church authorities within Indigenous communities. The fact that figures tied to the Indigenous day schools are still within living memory forces a reckoning with how recent this history truly is. Day schools were not a footnote to residential schools. They were part of the same colonial project, operating alongside them.
Yeah, so they were the exact same thing. It's just the kids got to go home at the end of the day, but that didn't make the treatment or anything any better.
The entire purpose of them.
Yeah, was to assimilate them into white culture and make them forget about their Indigenous heritage. So we're going to do a little recap on what residential schools were. Just in case this is your first episode, you didn't get to hear the series, we'll do a little recap. Residential school, that's really lighthearted. We're not doing a recap, okay? What is this, a sitcom? We are going to talk about what residential schools are as a little reminder for anyone who may have forgotten or are unaware. Residential schools were government-funded and church-run institutions. That's why we hear the phrase separation of church and state, folks. Not just this. Many reasons. But this separation of church and state. We can't let them get together. It's ultimate evil when they get together. I want to turn my volume up. Oh, hold on. Oh, never mind. I'm good. Okay. So the residential schools were primarily operated by Catholic, Anglican, United, and Presbyterian churches and administered under federal Indian policy. So us white folks, us settlers were so threatened by Indigenous folks. We had to create a whole policy around how to ethnically cleanse them, basically.
I like the Indigenous policies and way of life much better than our own.
Much better. Way nicer.
There was a thing I was reading recently about the idea of implementing paid days off for women during their periods. And someone brought up how most Indigenous communities do have moon days for women in their community to rest when they have their periods. And I'm like, exactly. They knew what was going on before we knew what was going on.
And once again, white people ruin everything. Indigenous children were forcibly removed from their families and communities. Attendance was compulsory for decades, so they had to go. Parents who resisted faced punishment, including fines or imprisonment. So fines they couldn't pay, and then also we don't have felony charges. What's our equivalent?
Oh, I know this and I can't think of it.
I'll Google it quick. Canadian equivalent to felony. And the equivalent. Well, we have like indictable offenses, summary conviction, and hybrid offenses. Anyway,
Hybrid?
I don't know. Hybrid offenses, the Crown can choose to proceed by summary or indictment, meaning they can be treated as either serious or minor. So, indictable offenses are the most serious crimes, with a summary conviction being less serious.
Fun.
Yes. So they're being hit with fines they can't pay and then slapped with indictable offenses and being sent to jail and having a record. We love that. I'm being sarcastic. We don't.
Just because they're kids, they don't want to send their kids to a place that's going to make them forget who they are.
Yeah. Many children were taken hundreds of kilometers from their home. This is So when we're talking about residential schools, this is children were exclusively taken from their homes, like plucked, abducted, human trafficked from their homes.
It was human trafficking. There's no other way to put it. That's exactly what it was.
100%. So the core goals of the residential school system was cultural erasure, so suppression of Indigenous identities, traditions, and spirituality, as well as language suppression. Indigenous languages were banned, and children were punished, often violently, for speaking their mother tongues. Hate that for them. And as well, forced assimilation. Schools aimed to re-educate Indigenous children into Euro-Christian norms. The stated goal was to eliminate Indigenous cultures and distinct societies. And there's just like no reason we had to hop on over here and then try to race culture. It's just such a wild choice. Like, just these were some serious choices that were made, and they sucked. The conditions and harm that the children suffered were abuse. It was widespread. Physical, emotional, and sexual abuse was documented across the system. And undocumented across the system.
A lot of undocumented.
There was neglect because residential schools were chronically underfunded. There was poor nutrition, inadequate clothing, unsafe housing conditions. So these children were being abducted from their homes and brought into like just horrid living conditions.
And it's ironic because a lot of times the reason that they would use to remove the children from the home was neglect. They would say that the families were neglecting their children, and then they were removing them and putting them into a horrifically neglected situation and being like, this is better because it's white.
Yeah, it's awful. Horrible. As well, there was a lot of death. Mm-hmm. Thousands of children died while attending residential schools. Many deaths were unrecorded or were not reported to families, and children were often buried in unmarked or poorly marked graves. So even if families were notified that something, that their child had died, they couldn't find them or bury them themselves. They just, off you go. Residential schools are now widely recognized as a cultural genocide. Cultural genocide. This conclusion was formally documented by the Truth and Reconciliation Commission of Canada. The system is understood not as a series of isolated abuses, but as a coordinated state project designed to dismantle Indigenous societies. And like as white folks, we hold our traditions strong. Mm-hmm. So now imagine somebody trying to say, you can't watch hockey anymore or get a double-double. We would get upset.
Think of how many people have argued that they should only say Merry Christmas.
I was just thinking that. When people are like, there's a war on Christmas. I'm like, when I drive up the highway, there's a giant Merry Christmas over that Canadian Tire. Okay.
You know what is interesting about the history of Merry Christmas? I had watched an entire video on it. It was actually at one point considered horrible to say Merry Christmas because Christmas is actually, especially in European areas, was drunken debauchery, people breaking into other people's homes, drunken brawls starting. And then when Queen Victoria came in and started introducing more Germanic traditions, they were arguing over whether or not to say Merry Christmas or Happy Christmas, because Merry Christmas was considered to go alongside with being merry and drunk and the drunken debauchery and all that stuff that they used to do. And then Happy Holidays came out with the song Happy Holidays.
Happy Holidays.
And so people started saying that, and that was well before the war on Christmas. So Happy Holidays has been the correct thing to say for decades.
And there you have it. This isn't even a Christmas special.
We're throwing it in there.
Yeah. It's January, folks. We're ready for the next one.
All right. So we talked about what the residential schools were. What were Indian day schools? Indian day schools were federally funded, church-run schools established under the Canadians' Indian policies. Sounds familiar. They operated within or near Indigenous communities rather than removing children to distant institutions. Many of the day schools functioned alongside residential schools, but not as replacements. Indigenous children returned home at the end of the school day. Attendance was often compulsory, enforced by Indian agents. That's like ICE for these children.
What? That is like ICE. Like that's like like that little boy Liam.
Yeah, exactly.
Fucking 5 years old. Ugh. Okay, keep going.
Families who resisted could face threats of child apprehension, loss of rations or government support. Curriculum focused on religious instruction, manual labor, obedience, and discipline, suppression of Indigenous knowledge and practices. For the administration and staffing, Indian day schools were run by the same Christian denominations as residential schools: Catholic, Anglican, United, and Presbyterian. They operated under the same federal policies and objectives, frequently staffed by individuals who also worked in residential schools. Principals and teachers held institutional authority, disciplinary power, and responsibility for enforcing assimilationist policies. So why are day schools often seen as better or safer? Mostly because the children were not housed overnight. The families maintained daily contact with their children. The schools appeared less extreme than from the outside, and the public narratives often framed the day schools as more humane, less disruptive, and a step down from residential schools. But this assumption still persists because historical focus has centered on residential schools, leaving day schools underexamined. Harm in the day schools was often less visible, less documented, and easier to dismiss. But the abuse and trauma experienced during the day schools was not negated by returning home for the night. It still was happening. The Indian day schools are not a separate moral category. They are a part of the same assimilation system enforcing cultural erasure, language suppression, and colonial control. Structural differences does not equate to ideology or experimental safety.
Yeah, so they were the same thing as residential schools.
You just got to sleep in your own bed at night.
You just got to sleep. And guess what? If you told your parents about it, they could do nothing to help you.
Nope.
And you were just, fucked. You were fucked. And I'm sorry for my ancestors. I don't know if mine were involved, but I'm sorry if they were. Don't clip that.
I feel like you say that at least once an episode.
Yeah. I feel like one of our pins are going to be "Don't clip that." Like a ghost behind it.
Oh
no. So same system, same intent. Indian day schools and residential schools were components of the same federal system. John A. McDonald's federal system. Fucking creep of the week. Every week. Both operated, residential schools and Indian day schools both operated under Canadian federal Indian policy, not separate educational philosophies. The intent of both systems was assimilation, not education in the modern sense. Both systems were funded by the federal government, overseen by the Department of Indian Affairs, and implemented through church partnerships. I fucking hate that so much. Separation of church and state.
I said to John, if I had any political control, I would be taxing every religious institution.
Why are they not taxed?
Every single religious institution would have some form of tax on them. Maybe not the entire, like, what small businesses pay. Yeah, 5 or 7%. But something to, I mean, because they do give back in certain ways. Like, a lot of churches do have
like
AA meetings and stuff like that, and homeless care, like places for the homeless on cold ass winter weather like we have right now. So they do some stuff to give back, but there's also alarm created because of the ideologies. And I feel that would kind of, taxing them would kind of just, you know,
humble them a little bit.
Just a smidgen, you know, just a smidgen.
Because then they're like, I'm not above. Because what do people say about life? There are two things true. There are only two things true about life. There are only two things certain about life: death and taxes. Yeah. Well, if you're not paying taxes, you could feel like you're like getting like a evading the law. You're getting a high from that. I am exempt. I don't need to pay taxes.
They preach eternal life. So
okay. Policies governing both schools aim to undermine Indigenous governance, restructure Indigenous family and community life, and replace Indigenous worldviews with Euro-Canadian norms. Ew! Christian doctrine was central to daily life school in both systems as well. Indigenous spirituality and ceremony were suppressed, condemned as immoral or primitive, and the curriculum promoted obedience to colonial authority, gendered labor roles, and European social hierarchies and values. Because remember, folks, Indigenous people have had two-spirited folks since the beginning of time. Indigenous folks have been onto the fact that gender is fluid and gender is a spectrum since the beginning of time. It's only us with our fucking religious values and whatnot that are like, what is this trans business? It's like, if you don't get it, you don't have to. Don't worry about it.
It doesn't affect you.
Or read a fucking book. Like,
that isn't the Bible.
Yeah,
and most of them don't even read that. They let somebody else decide how it's interpreted and preach it to them and tell them this is what it is.
Yes, yeah. Indigenous spirituality and ceremony were suppressed and condemned as immoral or primitive. And the curriculum promoted was... Oh, I already read this. Sorry. Just wanted to double down. Go. So naturally it would have been hard for anyone, let alone children, to not speak the language that they've spoken their entire existence. So the punishments for Indigenous languages and identities in both systems were banned or discouraged, and children were punished for speaking their languages. And the punishments for those included physical violence, public humiliation, isolation, and shaming, and cultural expression was treated as defiance rather than identity. That would be such a mindfuck.
If anything, I could make the argument that that's even worse for the day school children because they're going home to families that are speaking their mother language, their mother tongue, and engaging in these ways of life. So to try and go back into a school where you're not allowed to do those things, where everywhere else and the people who you look up to most are practicing this and living this way and demonstrating that to you, it's hard to just switch it off. So I'm sure these kids were getting beat regularly.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, it's like, obviously to us, it's like incomprehensible, right? Okay, so what were the Truth and Reconciliation Commission findings? The TRC of Canada concluded that Indian day schools and residential schools were part of the same colonial project. Both contributed to intergenerational trauma. Both caused lasting harm to individuals, families, and communities. And the commission rejected the idea that day schools were benign or merely educational.
Benign.
Yeah, right? So structural differences such as children returning home at night did not create moral or ideological differences. Harm was shaped by intent, policy, and authority, not by the physical layout of the institution.
Mm-hmm.
Residential schools and day schools shared goals, shared ideology, shared outcomes, and they should be understood as parallel mechanisms, not as separate systems. Yeah. So the only difference between residential schools and day schools were that the kids got to go home at night.
Yeah, they got to see their parents.
Yeah. But again, that's even torture, because as a parent, my kid's being beaten every day for doing the things I taught him, and I can't do anything about it, or I will be beaten.
Right?
Like, that's wild.
Or have your kids taken away from you?
Yeah, or they'll just take him to a residential school. He won't even, like, come home at night now. Ugh.
All right, so let's talk about the harm inside the Indian day schools, which were sites of documented harm, not benign alternatives to residential schools. And I love that they use the word benign. If you have to compare it to a tumor, it's probably not good.
Yeah. And that's for you too, boys.
Just saying.
If she calls you benign, it's not a compliment.
It's not a compliment. It's not the compliment you think it is.
She said I was benign.
Abuse occurred during the day schools under authority of teachers, principals, and clergy. The absence of overnight housing did not prevent trauma. Survivors reported beatings and corporal punishment, physical restraints, and forced labor as discipline. The physical punishments were often used to enforce obedience, punish preserved defiance, and suppress Indigenous language and behavior. There was also emotional and psychological trauma as well. Children experienced verbal degradation, threats and intimidation, constant fear of punishment. The Indigenous identity was framed as inferior, shameful, and something to be corrected or erased. These conditions produced chronic anxiety, long-term emotional trauma, and a loss of self-worth. And there was sexual abuse as well that occurred in the Indian day schools. Assaulted by teachers and clergy, exploitation of children under institutional authority, and survivors often faced silence, disbelief, and retaliation if they disclosed the abuse.
It's almost like the whole idea of the system was for people in power to take advantage of children and disadvantaged and vulnerable people.
Isn't that still going on today?
Huh.
Who would have thought? Abuse was frequently hidden due to the school's proximity to communities rather than exposed. There was humiliation, racism, obviously racism, and surveillance. Indigenous children were subjected to racial slurs, public shaming, and targeted discipline based on identity. The schools maintained a strict surveillance of behavior, reinforcing control rather than care, and racism was normalized as part of the daily instruction, which is horrific.
Awful.
Language punishment and cultural shaming was another part of it. Indigenous languages were prohibited, ridiculed, and actively punished. These punishments included physical discipline, isolation, and mockery in front of their peers. Cultural practices were portrayed as backwards and sinful and incompatible with civilization. Incompatible with civilization.
I think it's like, so, like, you know, like being bullied is like from your peers as a child is like one of the worst feelings. And then to like use that as a punishment is just wild.
From an adult.
From an adult, yeah, like that's
Who, right?
like as an adult human, you know, doing that any form of anything to chill is just like beyond to me, you know.
Like give your head a shake.
What are you doing?
Like, what is
with your
wrong
life?
with you? Go to therapy.
This is what you chose to do with your time? Like, don't do that again, please.
Go take a dog for a walk.
Take a dog for a walk. You. Yeah, you. Still haunting the same old fast fashion? Time to dig up something better with Back from the Dead Goods, a Canadian small business where forgotten threads get a second life and sustainability meets spooky. This isn't just upcycled clothing. It's resurrected fashion with an eerie edge. Handpicked, reworked, and revived, every piece is as unique as a ghost story whispered at midnight. And because you're a part of the Canadian Creepies family, you get an exclusive deal. Use code Canadian Creepies at checkout for 10% off. Find them lurking on Instagram, Etsy, and Poshmark. Links are in the episode description. Give your wardrobe a second chance at life, if you dare. Hey creeps, it's Valerie here, and if you're anything like us, you love capturing a moment, whether it's spooky, sweet, or somewhere delightfully in between. Let me introduce you to our go-to for stunning shots, darkroom photography, based right here in the heart of the Niagara region. Mel, the brilliant eye behind the lens, is a lifestyle and creative photographer who brings a little bit of magic and maybe a touch of mystery to every session. She's got all her prices listed right on her website, super transparent, no tricks, and she runs killer seasonal specials around Mother's Day, Halloween, Christmas, and more. I'm telling you, her Halloween sessions, creepy perfection. So, if you're in the Niagara area and looking to capture memories that are hauntingly beautiful, hit up Mel at mel@darkroomphotography.ca or check out her work at www.darkroomphotography.ca. That's Darkroom Photography, where your memories come to life, even in the dark. Looking for your next obsession? The Creators Collective Podcasts is your gateway to the dark, the chilling, and the downright fascinating. We're a community of independent podcasts with one goal: to share the best in true crime, paranormal tales, folklore, and unexplained mysteries. Whether you crave cold cases that won't stay closed, haunted histories that refuse to be forgotten, or stories that make you sleep with the lights on, there's a show waiting for you in the collective. And when you join us, you're not just listening to one podcast. You're stepping into a world of creators who love this stuff as much as you do. Check out the Creators Collective today. Follow the link in our show notes to discover your next favorite podcast. We'll be waiting for you. Support reproductive justice in Niagara. Niagara Reproductive Justice is a grassroots collective based in the Niagara region of Ontario, working to increase visibility and access to sexual and reproductive health care. They support people seeking abortion and other essential care by offering transportation, financial assistance, logistical help, and emotional support. Here's how you can help. You can make a one-time donation. Send an e-transfer to niagarareproductivejustice@gmail.com. Your support helps cover costs like gas for volunteer drivers, overnight stays, childcare, and other urgent needs. You can also support monthly via Patreon. Join their Patreon and support the cause month to month. It's patreon.com/Niagara Reproductive Justice. And you can volunteer your time. NRJ is always looking for volunteers to help with driving, outreach, admin support, and community organizing. If you're looking to make a real impact in the Niagara region, this is a great place to start. Contact them via email or DM them on Instagram or Facebook to learn more. You can find them on Instagram at Niagara Reproductive Justice and on Facebook at Niagara Reproductive Justice. Help amplify access to reproductive care right here in our own backyard. Whether you donate, volunteer, or spread the word, you're a part of the movement. All right, creeps, real quick. If you've got a Canadian business or project that you want to reach our spooky little corner of the podcast world, we've got ad space available on Canadian Creepies. And hey, if you're an artist, activist, podcast host, musician, writer, content creator, actor, or just someone with a strange or chilling story to tell, we'd love to hear from you too. We're always open to collaborations with folks who vibe with our creepy, curious little corner of Canada. Email us at CanadianCreepiespodcast@gmail.com and let's get weird together.
why going home didn't do damage, why going home at night did not undo the damage. Because the erasure trauma was daily. Returning home did not erase the daily trauma. It didn't prevent internalized shame, and it didn't stop fear from carrying over into family life. Many children could not articulate what was happening to them. They were afraid to speak out, and they carried the abuse silently between school and home. The trauma became embedded, not interrupted by the daily return. Like, could you imagine, like, waking up and knowing I have to go into this building and face this again today? Harm is not defined by where a child sleeps. It is defined by what was done to them, by who held power over them, and how often the abuse occurred. And the Indian day schools caused lasting harm despite operating on a daily schedule.
I had muted myself. I said I can't imagine it.
I didn't notice that you had muted yourself.
Okay, yeah. I was like, I can't imagine, because you asked me a question. I can't imagine that at all. Is that the end of that section?
Yeah.
Okay.
You're up, Bella.
I'm up. Okay, here we go. Because I'm not reading along with you. I'm just trying to listen.
Yeah.
That's better for
We are
us.
thrown off our game here with this. We're not thrown off our game. We are adapting. We're adjusting.
We're adapting. We're allowed to do different stuff. Not everything has to be the same, guys. Enjoy the different sound for an episode. Fuck. Where am I?
Listen, it is a winter blizzard out there today. So
the polar vortex.
We're polar vortex. That even sounds intimidating.
It is.
So we're just, at home on our couches, cozied up with our pets, trying to be safe and warm.
And still giving you content. Everybody's actually like, it sounds fine. I don't know what you're talking about. Okay. So not all experiences were the same. Experiences in Indian day schools, I don't like that word. I'm just going to say day schools going forward. Experiences in day schools varied by, I don't like saying it as a white person. I don't feel it's my place to. That's why I say that. Yeah. And I've said this before. Don't clip that. Experiences in day schools varied by location, time period, and individuals involved. Some survivors report less overt physical violence, and supportive relationships with specific teachers. Others report severe abuse and lifelong trauma. This variation is documented and acknowledged in historical records and survivor testimony.
I mean, when you think about it, there are always, in any school, kids that have, are teachers' favorites.
Yeah, for sure. And yeah, in every school there's that dynamic.
Mm-hmm. Workplaces too.
Yeah. So this is why variation does not negate systemic harm. Variation in individual experience does not change the system's intent, does not erase documented abuse, and does not reduce collective harm. Systems can cause widespread damage even when harm is uneven, abuse is inconsistent, and individual actors behave differently. Focusing on better experiences risks minimizing survivor testimony, shifting attention away from policy and structure, and reframing harm as anecdotal rather than systemic. Listen, not listen to you, listen, listeners, schools should be historically, schools should be a safe place of education for children. That's the bare minimum for anything called a school. That is the absolute bare minimum. So we don't even have to talk about the good experiences of day schools because that should just be expected, right? Like that you don't even have to talk about it. Just it doesn't even have to be highlighted. The good things that happen to the one person don't have to be highlighted. Does that make sense? And
in today's climate, in today's relation, children shouldn't have to go to school with bulletproof backpacks to feel safe.
Again, they shouldn't, or just clear backpacks. Okay. Survivor testimony is the primary source for understanding harm in day schools because there was no cameras, believe it or not. Or there were cameras, but they weren't being recorded.
I think if there were cameras, a lot of them were very primitive. So you probably didn't have sound or get that type of context.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's... Testimony reveals patterns of abuse across regions, long-term psychological and cultural impacts, and shared themes of shame, fear, and silence. The Truth and Reconciliation Commission of Canada emphasized survivor testimony as essential to establishing historical growth, understanding the scope of harm, and correcting official narratives that minimized abuse. Again, saying, but my aunt had a good time at a day school. It serves no purpose in this conversation at all. She should have had a good time at her school. Thank you.
Yeah.
Harm is not measured by distance from home. Harm is measured by what was done to children, who held power over them, and how often that power was abused. Returning home at night did not prevent trauma. It did not cancel daily abuse or protect children from long-term effects. Now we're going to acknowledge the different variations, and acknowledging them, what it does is it strengthens historical accuracy. It respects survivor truth, and it prevents oversimplification. Indian day schools were harmful. They were a part of the same colonial system as residential schools, and their impacts remain present today.
So sad.
It is very sad because generational trauma is so real.
For decades, harm experienced by the day school survivors was minimized, excluded from national conversations, and treated as secondary to residential school abuse. I'm sure most of you have never even heard of a day school prior to this episode. Formal recognition came significantly later than for residential schools. The day school settlement agreement was approved in 2019. That was 7 years ago.
2019?
2019.
That's messed up.
It acknowledged that the day schools did in fact cause harm. Survivors were excluded from earlier compensation processes, and the compensation was structured using a tiered harm-based model. How do you tier
harm? Give everyone the same amount.
How do you tell somebody, I feel like your traumatic experience isn't as bad as somebody else's traumatic experience in the same situation?
I don't. And like children as well. Like, I mean, obviously now they're adults, but like, you know, wow. What dum-dum came up with that idea?
A Canadian government?
Yeah, I know. Who sat around a table and said, tiered harm?
The church?
The church. Ah.
The compensation was also structured by survivor testimony rather than institutional records, probably because there were none. We've discussed this in our residential school things as well. They just didn't record anything. They didn't care.
And they didn't want a record of it.
Sorry?
They didn't want a record of it.
Exactly. They had to keep it hidden. Shame.
So that way they could keep their non-tax paying dollars.
The settlement applied to federally recognized day schools and survivors who attended between 1920 and 2000.
2000?
I was in the 8th grade in the year 2000.
10.
I
Wow.
graduated from the 8th grade and had my first year of high school in September of 2000.
I hate that.
Just for a frame of time reference there, people.
And how close, like how not, like these aren't, day schools are not like a thing of the past, like they are a thing of the past.
26 years ago.
26 years ago, thank you. 21st century.
Oh, Jesus Christ. So why were day school settlements separated from the residential school settlements? They were explicitly excluded from the Indian Residential School Settlement Agreement, or the IRSSA, based on the assumption that returning home at night meant reduced harm, and a narrow legal definition of residential confinement. Survivors had to organize separately, advocate for recognition, and launch independent legal action. This reinforced the harmful narrative that the day school abuse was less serious and that day school survivors were less deserving of redress. The recognition came after decades of survivor advocacy and after many survivors had already died. The delay contributed to prolonged trauma, distrust of institutions, and intergenerational harm remaining unaddressed. The public awareness of Indian day schools remains limited compared to the residential schools, which we've discussed as well. Ongoing, there are still many survivors who continue to face incomplete records, denial or reduced claims, and emotional burden of prolonged harm. The settlements did not provide full accountability for institutions, criminal responsibility for the abusers, or comprehensive healing supports. The church's and the government's responses have included apologies, financial settlements, and a continued resistance, delay, and silence. Recognition is not justice, and financial settlements do not undo the harm, and they do not restore the language or culture that has been lost. It does not replace the lives disrupted or lost. And the justice that is required is accountability, truth, and ongoing commitment to Indigenous-led healing and sovereignty.
Hell yeah. Just to the Indigenous-led healing and sovereignty part. Okay. So bringing it back to Robert Carney.
Full circle.
Full circle. Not Prime Marnie, I almost just said. Not Prime Marnie, Prime Minister Mark Carney, not him, his dad. Okay. Indian day schools were not separate or peripheral institutions. They were a part of the same colonial apparatus as residential schools. Their function depended on federal policy, church involvement, and local administration, otherwise known as... Never mind. I was going to say class traders?
Oh.
Bootlickers?
Bootlickers.
Same thing. Principals were enforcers of the system. Because certainly education wasn't the primary responsibility. Math wasn't the top of the list, okay? Principals in day schools enforced federal education policy, which means they maintained discipline and order and oversaw curriculum rooted in assimilation. Authority within the school included control over daily routines, discipline and punishment, cultural and linguistic suppression, and these roles were institutional, not symbolic. Robert Carney served as a principal of a residential school. His role places him inside the administrative structure of the day school system, within the chain of authority responsible for enforcing policy. This does not assign individual guilt for every harm. It situates his role within a system designed to control and a framework that caused documented and undocumented harm.
Mm-hmm.
Daisy was just snoring. Harm was produced by policies, authority, and enforcement, and not solely by physical removal, dormitories, or distance from home. Day schools required principals, teachers, administrators, and compliance with colonial objectives. When I say class trader, I mean principals and teachers, are just middle wage, middle income. Is that what they're called? I'm low income, so.
I don't think middle class exists anymore in this economy, to be
Right,
honest.
but in this time, they're like middle income.
Yeah.
Right? So when I say class traitor, I mean like you're enforcing policies from a class above you, the class above you being the federal government, because those people make more money, and at this time, that's how distinct the classes were. So you're taking orders from the class above you and punishing the class below you. That's why I call them class traitors.
Yeah.
Because you're closer to the bottom than you are the top. Always. And that's for you too, listener. You're always we as a collective people, we're always closer to the bottom than we are the top. It's just the top is very exclusive, and if you get there, you don't want to be there because they're bad people. Thank you. Okay. Yeah. Why does this matter now? Well, we've been highlighting that throughout the episode. But the involvement of identifiable figures highlights how recent this history is, 2000, and how embedded these systems were in everyday Canadian life. So like so Robert Carney was putting his pants on one leg at a time, just like the rest of us, ensuring harm was inflicted on children.
Yeah.
Yeah, ensuring that federal curriculum was followed, which included punishments physically beatings to children, and then came home and sat down at the dinner table with his child, who wasn't beat
how was your day?
Who wasn't beat that day, who was perfectly safe at his school and his education.
Who was actually taught math.
Who was taught math, and is so good at math, he became the prime minister of our country. Day schools remind us colonial violence did not always happen far away. It often occurred within communities during the school day under familiar authority. This proximity challenges narratives that frame colonial harm as distant or resolved. Understanding roles like principalship is essential to understanding how colonial systems functioned, how harm was maintained, and why accountability cannot stop at buildings or timelines. Day schools are not footnotes, they're evidence of how deeply and recently colonial control operated. Yeah.
All right. Both of these schools were not separate moral categories. They were products of the same colonial ideology, implemented through the same federal policies, and responsible for comparable and lasting harm. The structural differences did not change intent, power dynamic, or the outcome for many of the children. Reaffirming the central truth, the idea of less harm obstructs survivor testimony, minimizes systemic abuse, and reinforces colonial narratives of benevolence. Harm must be assessed by what was done to the children, how often it occurred, and who held authority over them, not by where the children slept and whether the families lived nearby. So listeners, we are asking you to question the narrative of what is less harm, especially when those narratives come from institutions and not the survivors. Sit with discomfort without rushing to reassurance or defensiveness, and listen to survivors as the primary authorities of their own experience. Discomfort is not a failure of understanding. It is often the beginning of it. The day schools are still poorly understood. They are still under-acknowledged, and they still remain absent from many public discussions of colonial harm. Honest reckoning requires naming the full scope of the system, acknowledging proximity of and recency, and rejecting narratives that soften or sanitize harm. Understanding the truth of the day schools is not about rewriting history, and it is not about assigning a simplified blame. It is about finally telling the story accurately, centering survivor voices, and recognizing that this history is not distant and its impacts are still ongoing.
That's right. And I didn't do a Creep of the Week or current case because I feel in these episodes it sort of waters down or distracts from the whole thing if I do something like that. So consider Robert Carney your Creep of the Week this week.
Fair enough.
Consider him the Creep of the Week. Yeah, you can follow me on Instagram at Canadian Creepies or Radio Valerie, also on TikTok, Radio Valerie, and YouTube, Radio Valerie.
You can also follow. Go ahead.
Sorry, my bad. And please, leave us a little message at speakpipe.com/Canadian Creepies or email CanadianCreepiesPodcast@gmail.com. There's so many ways to get a hold of me. It's ridiculous.
Val really does do her due diligence when it comes to you guys reaching out and leaving us messages or comments. She truly does read every single one of them and takes into consideration all of your Creep of the Week recommendations and all of your cases and suggestions. Yeah, everything. She does take that into consideration. She's got a list going. So send us your thoughts, people. You can also find me at Down the Crooked Path on TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube as well. I have my Tuesday segments of Canadian Creepies here, and I also have my episodes on Thursdays at the Down the Crooked Path podcast as well.
Great. Thanks, friend.
Thank you, friend.
And thank you, listener, for coming along on this emotional journey with us. Know that just by listening to this episode and learning something, it's an act of allyship.
Yeah.
So pat yourself on the back, girl or boy,
Have a little sweet treat.
Have a sweet treat and take care of yourself because these episodes, like, it's important history, but it's heavy content wise. So take care of yourself and pat yourself on the back. But also listening. What?
Stay creepy.
Stay creepy. I'm second guessing everything I'm saying right now. Don't let the bed creeps bite. Fuck.
Have a good one, guys.
Okay.